For centuries, we have been told tales of kings and emperors, of empires built by conquest and royal decree. But what if the greatest empire of all was not forged by a monarch, but by a corporation? A private company that, against all logic, came to rule a continent, enslave millions, and reshape the very fabric of global power. This is the story of the British East India Company. And this is the part many people still struggle to believe. Before the shadows of corporate ambition fell upon its shores, South Asia was a beacon of unparalleled wealth and cultural sophistication. In the 17th century, the Mughal Empire reigned supreme across much of present-day India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Its emperors, like Shah Jahan, commanded an empire stretching from the Himalayas to the Deccan Plateau, uniting diverse peoples under a centralized, highly efficient administration. This was no fragmented land. It was a global economic powerhouse. Cities like Delhi, Agra, and Dhaka were sprawling metropolises, far exceeding their European counterparts in size and grandeur. Mughal architecture stood as a testament to immense wealth and artistic prowess. But the true heart of this prosperity beat in its trade networks. India was the world's manufacturing hub, producing an estimated 25% of the globe's industrial output. Its fine cotton textiles, intricate silks, and rare spices were coveted commodities from London to Beijing. Ports like Surat, Masulipatam, and Chittagong teemed with merchants from across Asia, Africa, and Europe, exchanging goods in a sophisticated global commerce that had thrived for millennia. India was not just rich, it was a complex, self-sufficient civilization with powerful rulers and an economy that commanded respect and awe. It was into this world that a group of merchants, from a small island nation thousands of miles away, would attempt to carve a foothold. They came not with armies, but with ledgers and the promise of trade. On December 31st, 1600, in the heart of London, a royal charter from Queen Elizabeth I sanctioned the formation of the Governor and Company of Merchants of London Trading into the East Indies. This was the East India Company. Its initial purpose was simple, yet audacious: to break the formidable Dutch monopoly on the spice trade and tap into the lucrative markets of Asia. These gentlemen adventurers were driven by pure profit, their venture speculative, high risk, and often deadly. Their first ships, arriving in Indian ports like Surat in 1608, were small, their crews few, and their political influence negligible. They were supplicants, not conquerors, begging permission from mighty Mughal emperors like Jahangir to establish meager trading posts known as factories. These weren't industrial complexes, but fortified warehouses designed to store goods and protect their meager assets. They brought with them woolen cloths, metals, and coins, hoping to exchange them for the subcontinent's treasures. But the Mughals saw little of value in these offerings. They demanded silver and gold for their exquisite textiles and spices. The company, in its infancy, appeared weak, a minor player in a land of giants, utterly dependent on the whims and generosity of local rulers. Who could have imagined that this collection of merchants would one day command an empire? Yet, slowly, insidiously, the company began to weave itself into the intricate tapestry of Indian commerce. Their trade expanded beyond spices to indigo, saltpeter, and, crucially, fine Indian cotton textiles, which became wildly popular in Europe. Later, tea and opium would join this growing inventory. These company merchants, known as factors, weren't just traders. They became adept at navigating the complex political landscape, offering gifts, securing exclusive trading rights, farmlands from regional governors, and subtly building influence. Corruption was endemic, both within the company and in its dealings with local potentates. Alliances were struck with regional nawabs and princes, offering a semblance of protection for their growing wealth. As profits soared, a steady stream of wealth flowed back to Britain, fueling the early stages of its industrial revolution, and creating a new class of... With this growing economic power came military ambition. To protect their increasingly valuable assets and trade routes, the company began to fortify its settlements. Madras in 1640, Bombay in 1668, and Calcutta in 1690. These weren't just trading posts. They were burgeoning fortresses, symbols of a commercial entity beginning to flex its muscles, hinting at a power far beyond mere commerce. The company's ascent was perfectly timed, with a seismic shift within India itself. The mighty Mughal Empire, which had for so long kept European powers in check, began to fracture. After the death of Emperor Aurangzeb in 1707, a period of profound internal political instability gripped the subcontinent. The centralized authority weakened, giving rise to powerful regional kingdoms, the Marathas in the west, the Sikhs in the north, the Nawabs of Awadh and Bengal, each asserting their independence and vying for supremacy. This decentralization created a power vacuum, a chessboard ripe for manipulation. The East India Company, along with its French and Dutch rivals, skillfully exploited these political divisions. They offered military assistance to various factions, playing one regional ruler against another, subtly weaving themselves into the fabric of Indian statecraft. The Carnatic Wars, from 1746 to 1763, saw British and French East India Company forces clash directly on Indian soil, not for their home nations, but for corporate dominance, for control over trade and territory. These were proxy wars for profit, fought by private armies, laying bare the company's emerging role not merely as a trader, but as a political and military force. A private company slowly transformed into a ruling power. The pivotal moment arrived on June 23, 1757. The Battle of Plassey, fought in the fields of Plassey, in present-day India and Bangladesh, marked the turning point. The Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dowlah, a fiercely independent ruler, had dared to challenge the company's growing audacity. His vast army, estimated at 50,000 men, faced a mere 3,000 East India Company troops, led by the audacious Robert Clive. On paper, it was an impossible fight, but this was no ordinary battle. This was a corporate coup, orchestrated through betrayal and political manipulation on an unprecedented scale. Clive had secretly bribed Mir Jafar, the Nawab's commander-in-chief, and Jagat Seth, Bengal's wealthiest banker. When the battle began, Mir Jafar's large contingent remained inactive, standing by as spectators to their own fate. The Nawab's forces, confused and leaderless, were easily routed. Plassey was not a glorious military victory. It was a calculated act of corporate espionage, a victory of gold over steel. Overnight, the East India Company became the de facto ruler of Bengal, one of the richest provinces in the world. By 1765, the company had secured the Divani rights from the Mughal emperor, granting them the power to collect revenue and administer civil justice across Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Bengal became the company's greatest source of wealth, its human and material resources now theirs to exploit. Entire regions were reshaped for profit, with the riches of Bengal funding its ambition. The East India Company embarked on an astonishing transformation. It built one of the largest, most formidable private armies in world history. This wasn't a standing army of a sovereign nation. It was a corporate military machine, its loyalty bought and paid for. Its ranks swelled with hundreds of thousands of Indian soldiers, known as sepoys, trained and commanded by British officers. By the early 19th century, the company's military strength surpassed that of the British Crown itself, at times numbering over 200,000 men. This vast private force became the engine of corporate expansion, conquering territories from Mysore to the Maratha Confederacy, crushing any resistance to the company's commercial interests. Through relentless military campaigns, this trading entity behaved increasingly like an empire, projecting overwhelming force to secure its monopolies and territorial control. It was a terrifying reality, a corporation, not a crown, wielding the power of life and death over millions. Its decisions driven by the singular pursuit of profit. With political and military power secured, the company unleashed an unprecedented system of wealth extraction. They replaced the existing, often more equitable, tax structures with a ruthless, highly aggressive land revenue policy. The permanent settlement of 1793 in Bengal, for example, fixed land revenue at an exorbitant rate, creating a new class of landlords, zamindars, whose sole purpose was to squeeze every last rupee from the peasantry. If farmers couldn't pay, their land was seized. India's economy, once vibrant and diverse, was deliberately reshaped to serve British interests. Raw materials, cotton, indigo, saltpeter, were funneled directly to Britain's burgeoning factories. Simultaneously, India's thriving textile industry, once the envy of the world, was systematically dismantled. Indian finished goods were subjected to crippling tariffs in Britain, while British manufactured goods flooded Indian markets duty-free, destroying local livelihoods and transforming India from a global manufacturer into a mere supplier of raw materials and a captive market. An estimated £3 billion sterling in 19th century money was drained from India to Britain, a transfer of wealth unmatched in history, financing Britain's industrialization and cementing its global dominance. The stark reality of corporate power unfettered, of profit placed above human life, manifested in its most horrifying form during the Bengal Famine of 1770. A severe drought swept through Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Yet the East India Company's policies turned a natural disaster into an apocalyptic human catastrophe. Instead of offering relief, the company increased land revenue demands by 10% during the drought's peak, brutally enforcing collection. Their focus on maximizing cash crop cultivation, like opium and indigo, meant less land for essential food grains. When famine struck, their response was not to provide aid, but to hoard grain, manipulating prices for further profit. Estimates suggest that up to 10 million people perished, 1/3 of Bengal's population, over the 3-year period from 176-9 to 177-3. Villages became ghost towns, fields lay barren, and society crumbled. Beneath the wealth of empire lay famine, extraction, and suffering. It was a hidden human tragedy, a chilling testament to the unchecked power of a corporate entity whose only allegiance was to its shareholders, demonstrating the devastating emotional cost of empire. The hunger for profit led the East India Company down an even darker path, the systematic cultivation and trafficking of opium. From the late 18th century, the company gained a virtual monopoly over opium production in India, especially in Bengal and Bihar. Peasants were often forced to cultivate poppies, their land taken from food crops, their labor exploited for a commodity that would inflict untold suffering. This opium was not for domestic consumption. It was a weapon, deployed to balance Britain's massive trade deficit with China, which primarily accepted silver for its coveted tea and porcelain. The company illegally smuggled vast quantities of opium into China, creating millions of addicts. The profits were astronomical, swelling the company's coffers and fueling its global ambitions. When China's imperial government attempted to stop this illicit trade, it led directly to the Opium Wars of 1839, 1842, and 1856, 1860. Wars fought by the British Crown primarily to protect the East India Company's drug empire. It was an appalling display of corporate greed expanding internationally, revealing how a private entity could create a global addiction crisis for financial gain. Decades of exploitation, heavy taxation, cultural insensitivity, and forced economic transformation bred a simmering rage across India. The subtle resistance gave way to open defiance. There were earlier uprisings, like the Sannyasi Rebellion of the late 18th century and the Vellore Mutiny of 1806. But these were precursors to a storm of unparalleled ferocity. In 1857, the anger erupted into the Indian Rebellion, often known as the Sepoy Mutiny. Sparked by rumors of rifle cartridges greased with animal fat, deemed offensive to both Hindu and Muslim soldiers, the rebellion quickly spread beyond the military. It became a widespread popular uprising against company rule, encompassing peasants, disgruntled princes, and religious leaders. Cities like Meerut, Delhi, Kanpur, and Lucknow became battlegrounds of unspeakable violence, with atrocities committed by both sides. The company's private army, now a direct instrument of imperial power, found itself battling a continent in revolt. Civilians were trapped, suffering immense casualties, caught between the brutal efficiency of corporate warfare and the desperate fury of a subjugated people. The rebellion shook the very foundations of British power, revealing the profound human cost of unchecked corporate ambition. The sheer scale and brutality of the 1857 rebellion sent shockwaves through Britain. The East India Company, once the darling of investors and the engine of national wealth, was now seen as a corrupt, inefficient, and dangerous entity. The British government, unwilling to risk further chaos, decided that a private corporation was no longer fit to govern millions of people. In 1858, the Government of India Act formally dissolved the East India Company's administrative powers. Its vast territories, its armies, its immense wealth, all were effectively nationalized, transferred directly to the British Crown. Queen Victoria was proclaimed Empress of India in 1876, inaugurating the era of the British Raj. The company itself continued as a mere tea trading entity until its complete dissolution in 1874. The transition was complete. A corporate empire, built on centuries of trade, manipulation, and violence, gave way to a formal colonial empire. But the scars of company rule would run deeper and last far longer than any formal declaration could erase. The British East India Company had profoundly reshaped South Asia forever. Its extractive economic policies left a lasting impact of deep economic inequality, transforming a thriving manufacturing power into a supplier of raw materials. The vast infrastructure it built, railways, ports, were designed not for equitable development, but for the efficient extraction of resources. The corporate border-making and political divisions it sowed would eventually contribute to the violent partition of 1947, ripping apart communities and creating new nations of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, with deep-seated conflicts. Beyond the economic and political, there was a profound psychological and cultural impact. The suppression of indigenous industries, the imposition of foreign systems, and a deep-seated trauma of exploitation that continues to resonate today. The company's story is not just history. It is the foundation upon which much of modern South Asia was built, for better or for worse. The question remains, how could a corporation born of simple trade gain absolute power over millions of people and an entire continent? What happens when profit becomes more powerful than human life, than nation-states, than any moral compass? The story of the British East India Company is a haunting echo from the past, a stark warning. It compels us to ask, are modern corporations, with their global reach, their vast wealth, and their influence over governments and societies, still capable of wielding such unchecked power? Are we, in the 21st century, truly immune to the mechanisms of control and extraction that reshaped an entire world centuries ago? The forgotten files of history remind us that the true empire was not built by a king, but by a company. And its shadow, though often unseen, might still be shaping our world today. This documentary was crafted using advanced AI to push the boundaries of visual storytelling. If you appreciate this blend of history and innovation, please subscribe to support the channel. It only takes a second, but it ensures you'll be the very first to witness our next premiere.